We've generated millions in revenue with our Airbnb business, but here are 6 hard truths about investing in Airbnbs today.
We are the Real Estate Robinsons.
What's up, everyone? If this is your first time here, I'm Sarah.
I'm Tony.
And we're real estate investors who quit our day jobs by investing in Airbnbs, and we're here to show you how you can do the same.
So running a successful Airbnb portfolio can literally change your life. I mean, that's what it did for us.
Yeah.
But it is not all rainbows and butterflies.
So in this video, you'll learn the 6 hard truths about investing in Airbnbs today, but we're not going to just drop all of this bad news on you and tell you to go figure it out. We're also going to share exactly how to solve the challenges that come along with each of these hard truths we're about to tell you.
Now, make sure to stick around for all 6 because missing even just one of these could be the difference between success and failure.
Yeah.
All right, first up is hard truth number 1, which is increased competition. Now, look, guys, it's true. It is harder to run a profitable Airbnb in 2024 than it was in 2020. And part of the reason that's true is because there are simply more people to compete with on the platform.
So let's quickly define 2 important key terms. First is supply. When we're talking about supply, we're talking about the number of active listings on Airbnb. So how many properties do potential guests have to choose from?
Second is demand, and this is the number of nights that are actually getting booked on Airbnb. Now, we as the owners create supply, and as more and more people buy properties and put them onto Airbnb, you increase the supply. But it's the guests who are driving demand. The more and more people who come onto Airbnb and look for and book properties, the higher the demand.
Now, a basic economic principle is supply versus demand. If supply stays low and demand goes up, then prices go up. And the opposite is true. If there are tons of supply with limited demand, then the prices go down. And if supply and demand stay relatively equal, then prices just stay flat.
So that's our quick lesson in economics, but it's important that you have this understanding because the number of listings on Airbnb or the supply has increased pretty dramatically over the past few years on a national level. Now, demand has also increased, but across the country, we saw supply outpace demand, meaning more Airbnbs were available than the number of people searching. And when that happens, it's only the best of the best that continue to thrive and survive.
So if you've heard that the Airbnb market is saturated, this is what people are referring to. So that's the first challenge. The increased supply means there's way more competition.
So how do you solve that? How do you solve that challenge? Well, let's talk through it. So solution number 1 is going with a data-driven approach. Guys, if you're going to invest several $100,000 or even $1 million+ into buying an Airbnb, you need to make sure that you're using data to help you make that decision.
We get to talk to a lot of people who are interested in buying their first Airbnb. And one of the first questions we always like to ask is, what is their exact process for analyzing Airbnb properties? And oftentimes we literally get like a blank stare, or people just talk about how popular the city is. And neither of those are really good enough data points to make us confidently say personally that this is the city we should invest in.
There are beachfront properties in Hawaii that would probably stay fully booked, but that doesn't mean that it's a good investment for you. And you only know if something is a good investment by using data to analyze that property. Now, we have a video where we walk you through the exact process for analyzing properties as an Airbnb, so we'll link to that in the description. But go through that training and make sure you know exactly how to project things like average daily rate and occupancy in your expenses.
And solution number 2 is better design. Now, we've talked about the importance of design a ton on our channel, but just to reiterate, design is one, if not the most important parts of launching a successful Airbnb. And you see, most people treat design as an afterthought when buying their Airbnb, but the truth is design should be one of the very first things you take care of. Because think about it, when someone is scrolling through Airbnb, what is it that gets them to stop on your listing? Yeah, your price is important, your total is important, but it's really your design that makes them stop in the first place. It's seeing your photos of your property and thinking to themselves,
oh wow, this is such a nice property, I want to stay there.
So it's your design 1000% that will stop the scroll. So start with the design.
Now, you should expect to spend somewhere around $15 per square foot for design. So if your home is 2,000 square feet, you'll spend 2,000 times 15, which is $30,000 on design, and add on a little bit more for amenities and like backyard space. Now, Unless you're a certified interior designer yourself, our suggestion is to hire this out to a professional. The same way you would hire a lawyer if someone's suing you, or go to the doctor's office or a hospital if you need surgery, you need to go with a professional for design as well.
There are tons of great designers out there, but if you want to work with the best and our in-house interior designer, head over to therealestaterobinsons.com/design to book a free consultation with our designer.
Now, we do want to add one big caveat here. We talked about the Airbnb market being saturated, but that doesn't apply to every single city across the country. And the truth is, there are tons of cities across the country that aren't considered saturated, but there are plenty that are considered. Now, the skill is being able to tell the difference between the two. And the second caveat here is that nationally, we actually are starting to see supply and demand come back into balance. Demand is continuing to increase, and the number of new listings on the platform is starting to cool off.
So good news for those who've stuck it out and figured out how to make this work. All right, so that's the first hard truth. And now make sure to stick around until the very end of this video, because the final hard truth is one that can literally shut your business down.
But up next, we're going to hit something that's making it just a little more expensive to buy real estate right now. But first, we wanted to ask you a quick question. Do you feel like you need someone to work with you side by side as you buy that first Airbnb? Someone who's done it plenty of times themselves and can give you the exact process to follow. If you've been thinking about buying your first Airbnb for a while, but you feel stuck in analysis paralysis, then we are here to help.
We have a few spots open in our Airbnb mentorship program, Alpha Host Academy. Inside Alpha Host, we'll give you our exact process for choosing the right city for you to invest in using our market matching matrix, and we'll give you a proven framework for analyzing properties through our Pro Analyzer process.
And then we'll give you all of our processes and tools for setting up and managing your Airbnb on a daily basis. Now, when you join our community, you'll get a mix of one-on-one coaching, group coaching, on-demand content, community. Our goal is to help you confidently buy your first or your next short-term rental. So if you're interested in booking a discovery call to learn more, then head over to alphahostacademy.com.
All right, hard truth number 2, rising interest rates. As of this recording, the average interest rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage is about 7%. That's a massive difference from January of 2021 when the rates bottomed out at 2.6%.
And just so you understand how big of a difference that is, let's compare some numbers. So say you bought a $500,000 house today with a 7% interest rate. Your payment, not including taxes and insurance, would be $3,327. Now, that same $500,000 house with a 2.6% rate would have a monthly payment of only $2,002. That's a difference of $1,325 per month, which is a pretty big difference. So what's the solution? Well, the first solution is just to accept that this is the new normal. And you can either complain about rates being too high, or you can adapt your approach so that it still works for today.
Now, you technically could try and wait for rates to drop back down, but here's why that isn't necessarily a good idea. First, barring another major event like COVID that grinds the economy to a halt, there's nothing on the horizon that would pull rates as low as they were in 2021.
In fact, most experts believe that we'll get down to about 6% in 2025 and maybe 5% in 2026. But if you're waiting for those COVID interest rates to come back, you're going to be waiting for a long time. Now, the other reason it's a terrible idea for rates to drop is that typically when interest rates go down, demand goes up. And guys, remember our little economics lesson earlier, when demand goes up, so do prices. So you can either buy a property today at a slightly higher interest rate with a lower purchase price, or you can buy it tomorrow with a slightly lower interest rate and a higher purchase price.
And which is better? Well, let's go back to our example with the $500,000 house at 7% interest rate. Again, our monthly payment on that would be $3,327. But say we decide to wait to buy this house, and eventually rates do fall to 6%. But now, since so many people are shopping for homes, the purchase price of the home has gone up to $600,000. What's my payment now? It's $3,597.
So even though my rates went down, I'm still paying more for the property every month because of the higher purchase price. So that's the first solution to rising interest rates, is just accepting that this is the new normal.
Now, the second solution is just realizing that you can always refinance your loan later. So instead of waiting for that magical moment when interest rates come all the way back down to 3%, just look for properties that actually still cash flow today with that 7% interest rate.
And if you can find a property that does cash flow at 7%, then why wouldn't you buy it? Because look, if rates go down, then you can refinance and have even more cash flow. And if rates go higher, say they go to 9%, then you'll be pissed that you didn't buy at a 7%. Now, we're not encouraging anyone to buy a deal that doesn't cash flow and just bank on refinancing later. That's not a smart move. But if it's a good deal at a 7% interest rate, it'll be a killer deal at 5%. So that's hard truth number 2. Now, we've got a few more to cover. We'll be talking about challenges around super needy Airbnb guests and the upcoming recession, but our next hard truth is about you.
And hard truth number 3 is buying an Airbnb means running a business. Some people think that they're just an investor when they buy an Airbnb, but that's really, guys, not true at all. When you buy an Airbnb, you're really buying your own little like mini hotel, right? And since each Airbnb is its own little business, you have to act like a business owner. Because if you don't and you try and let this Airbnb run on autopilot, you're most likely going to end up with an underperforming property. So here's how to avoid that.
Now, the first solution is to build your team. Guys, your team is the absolutely most critical part of being successful as an Airbnb investor. And there are really 2 key players on that team. First is your cleaner, and second is your handyman.
Cleaners are super important because they're literally the ones who get the property ready for each and every guest. And if they do a poor job, it has a direct impact on your property's performance. If guests come into a dirty house, they're going to ask for a refund and they're going to leave a bad review. And if that happens often enough, your Airbnb profitability will get hurt.
So take the time to find a good cleaner and hold them to a high standard when it comes to actually cleaning your property. So here are 4 quick ways you can find a cleaner. First is asking other Airbnb hosts in your market for a referral. Second is going to local Facebook groups and seeing if there are cleaners advertising in there. Third is asking for a recommendation from your realtor. And fourth is using sites like an Angie's List or Turno or Thumbtack.
All right, so after you lock in your cleaner, the next person on your team is your handyman. Things are 1000% going to break at your property. You'll have a broken toilet handle with one guest, then a broken faucet with another, or a light fixture that stopped working or is, flickering too much. And the list just will go on and on and on.
The point is, you don't want to have to call a plumber or an electrician or any other kind of specialized tradesperson when something like this goes wrong. First, because it's expensive, and second, because they usually take longer to fix those things. Now, our handymen have a good working knowledge of most trades and can handle the vast majority of issues at our property the same day that they happen. And they're cheaper than calling like a plumber or an electrician.
Yeah, for sure.
So 100% you need to find a reliable handyman.
And if you're wondering how to find that handyman, you can literally just follow the same steps we outlined for finding a good cleaner. But it's easy to hire people for these jobs, we promise.
But there's another part that's harder, but it is absolutely necessary if you want to see yourself as a true business owner, and that's firing people. Now, we never take joy in firing people from our team, but you have to protect your business, and that means keeping a high standard for your cleaning and your maintenance teams, and then letting go of the people who can't meet those standards.
Solution number 2 is to use the right tools. When we were building our portfolio, we were still the ones building all of the furniture, and it was a pain doing that with the cheap tools that come with the furniture. But when we invested a little bit of cash into all of the tools we typically needed, building the furniture just became so much easier.
And look, it's the same with actually running your business. When you can invest in the right tools, it's easier. So we'll quickly cover some of the important tools that you'll need. Now, the first tool is your property management software, or your PMS. Now, your PMS is like the mothership for your Airbnb business. It automates the messaging between you and your guests, sending confirmations and check-in instructions and follow-up messages automatically. Like, for instance, when someone books one of our properties, they receive 13 automated messages from the time they book until after they check out. This automation makes sure that our guests get a high level of service with little work on our side.
A PMS also syncs your calendar across different booking platforms like Airbnb and Vrbo, which prevents double bookings. It provides a unified inbox communication. That way you don't have to flip between 2 different apps. And it keeps your cleaners up to date with an automatically updating calendar, which means no constant back and forth screenshots of the calendar type of communication.
Now, the second tool you need is a good business bank. We prefer Relay as our business bank, and there's a ton of reasons why. First is same-day ACH payments, which means you don't have to deal with the hassle of using Venmo and its weekly limits and limited payment options. Relay lets you send same-day ACH payments securely and quickly. Another reason we love Relay is the auto transfer rule. Now, if you've been around our channel for a while, you know that we love the profit first method for cash management, and Relay is the only bank that's set up to run this profit first method, which automatically manages cash flow by transferring funds from different accounts based on certain rules that you set up.
Relay also lets you add team members with varying levels of access to your accounts, which I love. This feature is great because it makes sure everyone has the right level of control without compromising security. And last, using a dedicated business bank account helps keep personal and business expenses separate, which keeps bookkeeping just simple and reduces the risk of tax issues.
Now, the third tool is a dynamic pricing tool like Price Labs. A pricing tool is going to aggregate all the data from Airbnb and Vrbo and all the other listings in your market and make pricing suggestions based on occupancy rates and market trends. Now, it helps you balance occupancy and your ADR to really maximize revenue. And this tool will give you data on like booking windows and occupancy and competitor rates, which gives you the ability to make informed decisions quickly about how to price your property.
The fourth tool is the digital guidebook. Instead of traditional printed house manuals, a digital guidebook offers instructions and recommendations in a more accessible format. It includes video instructions for tasks like using the keyless entry pad or how to operate the hot tub, providing a better guest experience and reducing the need for direct communication.
Now, digital guidebooks can offer also like local recommendations and upsell opportunities like discounted tickets to local attractions or professional services like a massage or chef. So this not only gives your guests a better experience, but it's also a way to generate some additional revenue.
So using these four tools, the PMS, Business Bank, Dynamic Pricing Tool, and Digital Guidebook will set you up to run your Airbnb like a true business owner.
Now, we recently did a video where we break down each of these tools in detail, so we'll link to that in the description as well. Hard truth number 4, guests are expecting more. And what we mean by this is you have to do more today for your guests to get a good 5-star review. And really there are 2 reasons why this is happening. First is that Airbnb as a company is focused on growth. And the only way that they grow is by getting more guests onto the platform and booking properties, right? So you're seeing Airbnb advertise more. And the good thing is the platform is growing, right? We touched on that earlier, but because of this, you're seeing more and more guests who are new to the platform, and all of those guests who are early adopters with like lower expectations are being drowned out by this new breed of Airbnb guests who want to spend less than what they would at a hotel and get better service.
Right. And second, Airbnb is actually coaching guests to expect more. We stayed at an Airbnb recently, and as you're going through the review process, Airbnb is like actually coaching you on how to review the property you're staying at. So for example, when you're leaving a review for cleanliness, if you select 5 stars, there's a little prompt that says exceptionally clean. And when you leave 4 stars, it says very clean. Think about that. Exceptionally clean, that's a really freaking high bar. But Airbnb is telling guests, only give this host a 5-star if you feel that the cleaning was exceptional. So annoying. So that's what we're up against. Tons of new guests with new expectations, and Airbnb's coaching literally these guests to expect more.
And there are 2 solutions we see for this unique challenge. Solution number 1 is similar to what we said about interest rates. You just have to accept that this is what guests want from Airbnb now. Now, again, if we go back to 2016 or 2017, the expectations of guests just weren't all that high. I was actually chatting with someone recently who said they had a beach house they would go to every summer. And, this was like in the early 2000s and 90s. And they actually had to clean the place themselves.
What?
Like, there was no cleaning fee.
Oh my
There were no cleaners coming in between. They were responsible for everything. Like, can you imagine that happening today?
Yeah.
So instead of complaining that guests are needy or that Airbnb is making it harder to get good reviews, just focus on how you can continue to give both Airbnb and the guests the kind of experience they're looking for.
Solution number 2 is to simply do better. Now, this might sound like a duh, but it's true. As the needs of our guests evolve, we have to evolve as hosts for what we offer them. You have to make sure that you're delivering on all the things that Airbnb guests review you on. So that's check-in, cleanliness, communication, location, and value. Make sure that your guest stay gets off to a good start. Triple check that their code for their front door is activated. Send them backup instructions on what to do if the code isn't working. Make sure your property is spotless and exceptional. This is one of those things that guests have really gotten tougher on. Hire good cleaners, fire the ones that aren't working out, and hold them all to a high standard.
And communication is probably one of the easiest ones. Just make sure that you respond quickly, professionally, and friendly to each message you get from a guest. and just kind of keep them in the loop as you work to solve whatever issue they bring up. And if you consistently deliver on these things, your guests will reward you with 5-star reviews. And then the Airbnb algorithm will reward you with more visibility and more bookings. And more visibility and more bookings means more revenue.
We've talked with a lot of people over the years who are like,
Sarah, Tony, my listing has been struggling and I'm not sure what's wrong.
then we look at their listing and see they have 400 reviews with a 4.5 rating. Now that's hard to overcome.
Now, before we keep moving, we'd really appreciate if you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, hit that little bell for notifications. Guys, I think as of this recording, we're like just under 50K subscribers. We want to double that by the end of the year and get to 100K. So if you're enjoying this content, please share it with someone who you think might get value from it as well.
We've also got a totally free download for all of our subscribers. If you head over to the realestaterobinsons.com/calculator, we've put together a free tool that helps you analyze properties you're considering purchasing as an Airbnb.
All right, hard truth number 5. And this is, we don't know where the economy is headed. Now, depending on who you ask, some might say that we're already in a recession. Others might say we're heading towards a recession. And someone else still might say we're going to be able to avoid a recession altogether. Now, regardless of who you listen to, the simple fact that there's so much disagreement should make you want to game plan for different scenarios. Look, even if we are heading toward a recession, there are still 2 things that are true. First is that every recession in the history of humankind has come to an end at some point. And the average length of each recession is just under 1 year. Second, people still spend money during a recession on travel. So this industry won't come to a screeching halt, but you will have to compete at a higher level to stay profitable.
So solution number 1 is to build up your reserves. Your reserves are your rainy day savings for your property. If anything goes wrong, it's there to give you some cushion. Ideally, you want 3 to 6 months of mortgage payments sitting in your savings account as your reserves. So if your total mortgage payment with principal, interest, taxes, and insurance is $3,000 per month, then you want between $9,000 to $18,000 in your savings account.
So if you're not there yet, focus on beefing up your savings. Now, we're actually strategically focused on growing our reserves over the past few months just to give us more peace of mind. And it's so much easier to sleep at night when that happens. Now, the second solution is to play the long game. The only thing we know with certainty about the economy is that it's cyclical, right? Things go up, things go down. We just can't predict when those things happen. So right now, we're in this weird place, again, depending on where or who you talk to, whether or not we're in a recession, right? But other things within the economy are still looking good. So the point is, if you buy a piece of real estate today, chances are, even if the next year, 18 months, whatever, are somewhat up and down, over the life of ownership, that piece of real estate will probably still do well for you. There's this saying by Warren Buffett that says, be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. Well, this is the situation where there's a lot of fear. And a lot of people are standing on the sidelines waiting for that perfect time to get started. And for those who can overcome that fear, there are a lot of opportunities out there.
All right, on to the last and final hard truth. And this is potentially the most important one, and it's this. Airbnb regulations are changing. In so many cities across the US, it used to be the wild, wild west with Airbnb regulations. There was like literally no rules. But as Airbnb has grown in popularity, it's forced a lot of cities to actually take the time to figure out how to regulate Airbnbs. And the really scary part is that we've seen so many different responses to this.
Now, New York City effectively banned short-term rentals. Cities like Dallas and Las Vegas are getting sued for their regulations. Now, we'll talk about the solutions to this in a second, but we just want to say one thing first. Guys, regulation isn't necessarily a bad thing. Think of any major industry, and there's usually some level of regulation that's in place to make sure that businesses are run safely in a way that supports the city and those businesses that operate within that city. I'm glad there's an agency that regulates airline pilots and doctors and car manufacturers, right? Smart regulation can keep out the bad apples, right? Those who, if there were no regulation, might do stupid things that kind of harm the entire industry.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that we're seeing Airbnb regulations start to become a bigger part of the conversation.
But let's talk through some of the solutions for navigating these regulation changes. The first solution is to do better research. Before you waste your time networking with agents, analyzing a bunch of deals, and submitting a bunch of offers, your very first step should be to make sure you know and understand the regulations in that city.
Now, we've seen people get into trouble where they buy a property and don't realize until afterward they can't actually rent that property out as a short-term rental. So start with that step. know the local laws and the regulations.
Do your research online, call City Hall, or even better, go there in person. But do not buy a property until you truly 1000% understand the ins and outs of that city's regulations.
Now, solution number 2 is to focus on true vacation markets. Now, we prefer to buy in cities where the risk of regulation is fairly low. And that tends to be true in cities that are primarily driven by vacation and tourism. Cities that don't have big business headquarters or major universities or other industries that kind of prop that economy up. And the reason we like to choose those markets is because those cities, they need the revenue generated by Airbnbs. And if they were to ever try and ban Airbnbs, it probably wouldn't even pass.
And if you decide to skip solution number 2, then solution number 3 is to have multiple exit strategies. If you're buying an Airbnb in an urban or suburban location, you're opening yourself up to more risk. So you'll just want to make sure that the property is profitable, even if you can't run it as a short-term rental. Can you run it as a midterm rental or maybe even as a long-term rental and still turn a profit? If so, then it's a deal that might be worth keeping.
So that's the 6th and final hard truth. Guys, we hope you got some value from that. Now, before we go, please connect with us on Instagram. I'm at Tony J. Robinson. She's at Sarah Rad Robinson. If you're on TikTok, you can follow us there at The Real Estate Robinsons.
Again, if you guys liked what you heard in this video and you want to really take your Airbnb business to the next level, then book a free call with our team to learn more about our Airbnb coaching program called Alpha Host Academy. If you have any follow-up questions, please drop a comment below and we'll do our best to answer it. That's it for today, guys. I am Sarah.
I'm Tony.
And we are The Real Estate Robinsons.